Okay, Anthony Yarde versus Artur Beterbiev for the IBF, WBC, and WBO light heavyweight titles at the Wembley Arena this weekend. An absolutely huge fight. The first real big fight of the year, I'd say. A fight that a lot of people seem to think is only going to go one way, which I do find quite surprising because this fight is a real... it has the potential to be a bit of a Teofimo Lopez Lomachenko thing going on, because obviously with Anthony Yarde you got the younger man, 31 by 7 years, Beterbiev 38, so it's not exactly a if you look at history of boxing, a lot of the times there is a point where the older champion kind of meets his the younger version of himself. Not saying that these two are similar, but you do kind of get that. And I think with Beterbiev, a fantastic fighter, but I'm just surprised that people think it's going to go it's so one-sided, and that is why I'm surprised. But an excellent fight though. Obviously you got Artur Beterbiev, who is an absolute killer, and I don't use that word lightly, but this man is an absolute machine. Even at his age, a light heavyweight, he is absolutely running through a lot of these fights. And the thing about Beterbiev, which is so good, he is so relaxed in there, but yet he doesn't even look like he hits you hard, but he just hurts people in there. And I think it's great for the sport to have guys like this. He looks like a scary man in general, so I think it's fantastic. And with Beterbiev, you look at his record, 18 fights, 18 KOs, an absolute, like I said, a wrecking ball. And then we go with Anthony Yarde, 23 wins, 22 by KOs, 2 losses, 1 by KO, even though I maintain the Kovalev one was a bit of a more of an exhaustion thing with Anthony Yarde rather than him getting put out cold, but neither here nor there. But yeah, an excellent fight though, this one. With Beterbiev, he's the favourite in this fight, like I said. A lot of people think that it's going to go one way, obviously, with Anthony Yarde. His competition recently has been interesting. Obviously, his last fight, he beat Stefan Koikov, KOing him in that one. I forget what round it was now, but he's, with Anthony Yarde, it's weird. His opponents are quite interesting because he'll fight guys who aren't very good, or he'll fight world level guys. I think the only one who's a bit of a difference in that is when he fought Lyndon Arthur, because Lyndon Arthur, to me, some people may think he's British level. I think he's above that. I think he has the ability to be world level, and I think that was the only one where I think it kind of broke the mold. But other than that, he kind of fights journeymen, or he fights very, very good guys. And yeah, it's an interesting one, this one. I do feel with Anthony Yarde, a lot of people they kind of have a weird opinion about Anthony Yarde. They don't really like Tunde Ajayi. They feel like he obviously is a bit outspoken. Me personally, I like him. I think he's I understand the frustration of him talking down sometimes to legends like Andre Ward. Who else did he? It was more mainly Andre Ward, but speaking out against someone like that, he spoke out against Kovalev when Yarde was set to fight Kovalev. And yes, it's I don't know. I don't really like that aspect, but I think he's quite a fun character, and I do think he's certainly with Tunde Ajayi. I know a lot of people don't like, but I feel like his chemistry with Anthony Yarde and the relationship they have as trainers, as trainer and fighter, I think it is something that, when you need motivation, and we saw this with so many fights. We've seen this with Teddy Atlas a lot of the times when he's fighters, and I also do think with Anthony Yarde, you need somebody who's going to get you up. And I feel like Anthony Yarde, he doesn't feel like he lacks confidence, but I do feel like it's helpful to have a guy who's going to be that, not cheerleader, but the guy who's going to motivate you. And not every time a tactical coach is always going to do that. And one thing that's interesting about this fight for Anthony Yarde as well, he hasn't sparred before, didn't really spar much fights. This fight he has done. And I think he's got James Cook, who's very experienced in his camp as well. So, and I think also he's gone 12 now quite a few times. And I do think with Yarde, I think the Lyndon Arthur fights were good for him. I think the first fight I was shocked at. He just wasn't really throwing much. I did think Lyndon would beat him in the second fight because I figured it'd be the same thing. But to me, Lyndon Arthur kind of was a bit of a shell in that fight. But regardless, It was an excellent performance from Anthony Yarde. To do that against a guy like Lyndon Arthur, essentially blow him out within, 2 to 3 rounds, I think it was. Excellent performance. And like I said, with Yarde, his record is a bit... like I said, it's 23 wins and only 2 losses. Obviously, the 2 losses, one to Arthur, the other to Kovalev. Now, the Kovalev fight, I think, is an interesting one to me, the Kovalev fight. Because with Kovalev, to me, I actually thought he'd win. Obviously, it's a few years back now, but I did think he'd beat Kovalev. Reason being, I felt like Anthony Yarde is one I've had a lot of faith in for a long time. I think he's probably my favourite British fighter out there, because I did see the potential for him gassing out in fights and maybe being a bit too muscular, but I do see someone who could blow guys out in there, and I do think he has that explosiveness, that power. If put it this way, if Anthony Joshua had the explosiveness of Anthony Yarde, I think he'd blitz most of these heavyweights, including Fury, Wilder and Usyk. But he's just a bit not as quick. But Yarde is very, very fast. He's fast and powerful, which is a dangerous combination. And that's why I always felt against Kovalev, he could have done that. And he almost had him out of there in that 8th round. The only issue that I'd say with Yarde, I think he started too late with the body attacks. I think he should have gone from first round onwards with that, because he's a brilliant body puncher, Yarde. And I also think he went so hard. Obviously, Tunde told him to get him out in the 8th round to stop him then. And he was close, but I just think he went... If he had done another round of that and then gone for it, I think it would have been smarter. Maybe Tunde didn't think he had the gas tank to go all 12 and sustain it. Maybe he felt that he had to get him out now or never. But yeah, certainly an interesting one though. And I do think in this fight though, he's learnt a lot. His last fight only lasted 3 rounds. I'm looking now against Koikov, but obviously was able to get rid of. Obviously, the first Lyndon Arthur fight, he went all 12. Which a lot of people, again, they were very critical, I felt, of Yarde in that fight. But to me, I'd like to say, I think he had a lot of mental problems. He obviously lost many family members as well during COVID, so I think those things can affect a fight. And people rarely ever look at the mental side of boxing, but it's big, not just for boxing, for any sport. You need these mentally. If you're not right in there, it's never going to be. You're never going to perform the way that maybe you could do. So Lyndon Arthur, before he obviously fought Koikov, KO'd him in 3, it's knocked out Lyndon Arthur and now in the 4th round. And then before he got the rematch against Arthur, he fought Alex Fearon, which ended in a 1-round KO. And this is what I'm saying about his opponents. Then he fought Lyndon Arthur, obviously lost. Then we've got Dex Bellman, and again in that fight, 6-round KO, so a bit further. I do think the 12 rounds actually helped him against Lyndon Arthur as well. Going all 12, I think, can help a guy. He never gassed in that fight as well. He then fought Diego J. Ramirez, knocked him out in 2, and then fought Kovalev, which we know what happened, where he got knocked out with the jab. I think it was the 11th round, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 11th. So he's come on a lot, I think, Anthony Yarde, and I do think he'd be wiser now after that. We saw, with certain fights like Canelo learnt so much when he fought Floyd. I think when you saw Canelo as well in the second Triple G fight, you saw he wasn't backing off. He was the aggressor, which is what he needed to do. We've seen, I know these are different because they're rematches, but then also you look at somebody like, and if you go to the UFC, Francis Ngannou, when he lost to Stipe Miocic, got absolutely outclassed, was knackered after the second round came in, this time was more patient and won the fight. So I think fighters learn a lot, and this is where we see if Anthony Yarde has learned from that Kovalev fight. Now, even if he has learned, it might still not be good enough, because like I said, Beterbiev is a killer, but I don't know, I do think it'd be interesting to see how he does in this one. Home advantage as well in Wembley Arena, so there is going to be a potential home cooking factor in here, because I do think if it goes to judges and it's close, they probably are going to give it to Yarde. However, Yarde's also like very, very popular in London as well, so I think that's that. But however, I do think, with someone like Beterbiev, obviously Chechnya has that blood in him where he's very, very ruthless. In terms of Beterbiev's last few fights, fought Joe Smith Jr. and it was a clinical performance and TKO'd him in the second. which the referee saved him because Smith was absolutely out on his feet in that fight. Knocked out Marcus Brown in the 9th round of the fight. Adam Deans knocked him out in the 10th. And Alexander, that name is Gyozic, I think is how you pronounce it. 10th round, 5th round before that, Callum Johnson, 4th round. So you see, he pretty much gets these guys out of there, out the middle rounds. And every single one of his fights, like I said, 18 fights, 18 KOs. He's knocked out everybody he's fought. And that's why I think the mystique of Beterbiev comes from. So, yeah, I'm really interested in this fight, though. I think Beterbiev is a killer, silent. He doesn't really hit, like, he hits hard, but he doesn't look like he hits hard. Like with Deontay Wilder, sometimes he'll just hit you and you can kind of see why people get knocked out by his shots. But with Beterbiev, he doesn't even look like he hits that hard, but he's just so ruthless in there. So, yeah, very excited to see how this one pans out, though. I think with Beterbiev, his age is well, 38. Will Father Time finally catch up? We'll obviously see in the fight, but either way, I've gone on long enough for this. Time to get into what I think both fighters should do. So, starting off with the challenger in Anthony Yarde. First thing is, Anthony Yarde needs to get inside. Now, you can't stay on the outside against Beterbiev because that's where you are in his range. To me, Yarde is explosive, and Yarde is very, very good once he gets inside an opponent. When he's inside the pocket, he's got fantastic hand speed, very good combinations, and I think that's what you need to do against Beterbiev. That's why you need to be active, and I think you do that. And I genuinely think that I think you got more of a chance of sort of slowing Beterbiev down as the older man, and you are the younger man. You're the more spry one in there. Beterbiev's quite flat-footed. Yarde, he's to an extent he's flat-footed, but he's also very athletic as well. So I think that's going to help him in there. So first one, like I said, get inside. Second, and that's one thing that he didn't do in the Kovalev fight enough to me, really get inside. He kind of stayed outside on the jab and kept getting stung with it. Second, I say this every single time, and people should still do it, but this one I am banging on about this. Go to the body. And he has a vicious body puncher, but this one is, I use this more than I use any of them, because Anthony Yarde getting inside and going to the body, you need to slow this older man down. He's not going to stop. He's going to keep coming forward and forward and forward. He's going to try and walk you down. He's going to try and stay on the outside. And I think, to me, with Beterbiev, his defense, it's not, I would say, outstanding, but it also isn't poor either. Nobody's really tested it, I think, that much. And I think because he is so, how would I explain? He's just so frightening that people almost sometimes are afraid to throw against him because of the power that he does possess. And to me, with Beterbiev, if you look at his guard and his sort of stance in general, the way he kind of, his guard is, it's open for body shots. It's not specifically like crying out for it, but I do think that the body shots are there for Yarde if he's just smart and economical with this going up to the head and body. He did that very well in that 8th round against Kovalev, and I felt that's what slowed Kovalev down, and that's where the openings come for him to land his explosive combinations. So yeah, that's it. Like I said, inside, go to the body, slow this guy down. And then the third, now this is something that I also think he didn't do in the Kovalev fight. Be the busier fighter. Now, I don't mean throw about 100 punches around, because with Yarde's physique, he's going to gas out. But what I mean is, in the Kovalev fight, he was down about, I forget, it's been a long time, he was down at the point of when the 8th round came, and he threw everything at him. And I respect it, because not a lot of fighters do that, but the problem that you've got is, I always think with fighters, you don't want to give rounds away. You want to be the one who's landing more shots, being busier in there. You see with some fighters like, I cited the Teofimo Lopez-Lomachenko fight as a good one. I think, the way Teofimo was, he was constantly landing on Lomachenko, and as that goes on, regardless of how good a fighter is, you'll build confidence in there. And I think for Yarde, I genuinely think that if you can just outland him round after round, we get to the 4th, 5th round, if Beterbiev gets desperate, that's when you will find your openings. Being the quicker fight, because I think out of the two, he's got way superior hand speed, Yarde. Not by a lot, but I do think he's got the hand speed advantage over him. So yeah, I think if you can just stay busier, outland him each round, that's where, as well, like I said, with you being at home as well, you got way more of a chance of judges giving you that than if you're just standing on the outside and not doing much and not landing as much, just looking for the big shots. I think if you stay busy, if you're active in there, I think there's a good chance when we get to the judges, they're going to side with you more. If you just outland the fighter, I mean, naturally, that is how judges do score it. Whoever lands the bigger shots and who lands more shots. And I think that's what, to me, that's what Yarde didn't do in the Kovalev fight, and I think it's what it should do here. So those are my I won't say tips, but tips is the wrong word. What I feel Yarde needs to do in this one. Then we get to the champion, Beterbiev. One is stay on the outside. Now, Beterbiev is a better technical boxer than people actually give him credit for, because he's such a monstrous puncher. People kind of look at him as that, but he isn't someone who swings wildly. He's very, very calculated in there. He picks his shots very well, and I think if you just stay, like I said, just stay patient. I mean, stay on the outside against Anthony Yarde. I give it the second way around there, but yeah, if you just stay on the outside against Anthony Yarde, getting frustrated, if you can constantly just pop the jab out against him as well, I just think that staying on the outside, it serves you better, because out of the two, even though Yarde's more explosive per se, Beterbiev is the harder hitter. If they end up getting to an exchange, I'm backing Beterbiev to knock him out, because he just hits harder. But I do think if you put in a performance where you can sort of just stay on the outside, and then I think you do that, I think Yarde gets desperate and gets frustrated, and that's where, likewise, his shots open up, and that's where he can land his monstrous punches. And I think with Yarde, if you can just keep him on the outside on the jab yards, if you look at the I didn't go over it actually, but if you go through the tail of the tape between the two of these, it's interesting, because Yarde himself doesn't really look like a because I don't know, maybe it's because he's also quite bulky as well. He doesn't look like someone who you would think is has a particularly long reach. You know, when you look at him, he's not someone who I think sticks out like that. And I think if you look at, so they're both essentially the same height, and Beterbiev has just 1 inch reach advantage. So it's not a lot, and this is why I say I think he really needs to be concentrating and stay on the outside. Beterbiev, don't try and get drawn into the middle with Yarde, because even though, yes, you can beat him, I think the times where I feel like he would be alright, maybe trying to exchange, is if it's in the later rounds and Yarde's a bit more tired. I think early rounds you need to stay away from that and stay on the outside, pick him apart. Like I said, I think I'd say he's a better boxer out of the two, and I think staying on the outside is very crucial. And I kind of gave both of them away there, so I may as well just both of them. So I said stay on the outside. The second one's be patient. Don't rush your work in there. You can just stay on the outside, be patient, let Yarde almost wear himself out, and I think that's when the opening will come. And I do think with Beterbiev, if he can frustrate Yarde, if Yarde tries to have a war, but he just stays patient, doesn't rush the work, picks his shots at the right moment, I think it's smart. And the third point, which I kind of always said, is be consistent with the jab. Anthony Yarde hates that jab. Kovalev was able to sting him constantly with it, as was Lyndon Arthur. Now, you'd think he'd learned from those fights, but regardless, if that hole was there before, yes, you can clear up, but there's only so much you can do. And I think with Beterbiev, as hard a hitter as he is, I don't think Yarde should Beterbiev maybe like throw the jab. I don't think Yarde will want to, quite often anyway, take that risk of almost as he throws the jab, coming over with the overhand right, or trying to land his combinations at the same time, I think, because of how hard a hitter Beterbiev is. So yeah, to me, you can just be consistent with that jab, keep landing it, staying on the outside, being patient, and eventually that opening will come for that big right hand, and he can land the combinations. And then you get into the later round, that's where I think it gets a bit ugly for Yarde. If Beterbiev does these things, I do think he's better off fighting this fight than a fast-paced back-and-forth fight, because I think you may favour Yarde just slightly. It's even if that happens. But to me, yeah, I just feel, like I said, staying on the outside, being patient in there, not rushing anything. I don't think getting into the centre, I don't think fighting in the pocket with Yarde is smart. And I also think, like I said, being consistent with that jab. If you can consistently land that jab, again, there's not a lot in it in terms of the reach, but I think Beterbiev's also got a very stiff jab, and I think that would help him against Yarde. And remember, Yarde got knocked out with a jab. Now, that was only because of him being tired. But either way, it's still something to watch out for. So yeah, this is my sort of ideas. I think what of both fighters need to do to get the victory in this fight. Now comes to my prediction. Beterbiev is the favourite, rightly so, in this fight. Yarde, because of his lack of experience and hasn't really fought those elite guys, he's kind of seen as a bit of a big underdog. Beterbiev's an old man, 38, Yarde's 31. And 31's very young in boxing as well. Not very young, but it's young enough in boxing. And I do think, with Anthony Yarde, if he has learnt those lessons from the Kovalev fight, Anthony Yarde's a nightmare for anyone in this division. This light heavyweight division is very, very exciting with him and Boatsi. You've also got, I think, Callum Smith coming up into the division. There's, from a British point of view, there's so many great fighters in there. Craig Rich as well. Lyndon Arthur still hanging around, maybe. So there's so many, I think, exciting components in this division. And that's just a British point of view. Then we've got the likes of Dimitri Bivol. We've got the likes, like I said, of a Beterbiev. And, Canelo's always kind of lurking around the division. So I think it's something that this division is very exciting. And I think with Yarde, should he fight a smarter fight, I think he has a chance of getting this done. However, to me, Beterbiev is very, very good, but he's a monstrous puncher. He reminds me of a bit of a prime Gennady Golovkin. But I think that's where it ends. I don't see him as a slick boxer where Yarde's got no chance. I think he's got a better chance than people actually give him credit for in this one, Anthony Yarde. I think Yarde is smart in there, goes to the body, he can get this one done. And Beterbiev, he's a harder puncher. And if it goes past 6, that's where there's problems. Because if he gets the later rounds and Beterbiev is still there, he's not hurt, then I think you got problems for Yarde. Because that's where I think Beterbiev will kick in. His experience will kick in. I think he'll land the bigger shots. And with Yarde being the bigger man, he's going to tire in there. And that's where the problems come. And that being said, I'm going against the grain here. Because I think Anthony Yarde will get this one done. Surprising, I know. I think he gets it done. I'm going to say 7th round. I think he'll fight what I'm saying. I do think he'll be smart. He'll learn from the Kovalev fight. I think he'll be a bit more active in there. I don't think he'll be wild, obviously, but I think he'll be taking it to Kovalev, got home advantage. I think he'll dig the body, and I think eventually Beterbiev is an old man, 38. Father Time will catch up with everybody, and I just think when it gets a younger Anthony Yarde who is a vicious body puncher, maybe vicious is the wrong word, a very good body puncher, explosive, fast hands, fast combinations, I just see Anthony Yarde getting this one done. Might be wrong. I say this a lot of fights, but this one, I could see Beterbiev KOing him in the later rounds, but maybe in KOs him in the early rounds, I don't know. I think Yarde have to be stupid or run onto something dumb for that to happen, but I do think that that regardless though, I think this fight ends in a KO. Either way, if this goes to decision, I'd be very surprised. I think it's more like to be a decision for Yarde than Beterbiev. I think, well, actually, I'll say that actually. Maybe Beterbiev definitely can outbox him, but I just feel somebody's going down in this one, and I can't wait. It's an amazing fight. 2 absolutely fantastic light heavyweights, and a very exciting fight. The first real big fight in boxing in 2023, and amazing one. Yarde, Beterbiev even. I'll do a review after the fight, and yeah, until next time.